Now, what is up, my fellow prod coders? Welcome to this video, and today we will start refactoring our code. So right now everything is in one file, but of course I don't want to finish the tutorial like this because I want you to write like high quality code. And the thing here is that we did everything in one file so that it's easier to understand which action you have to perform when, right? So we have the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's kind of easier to understand what we need to do. But now that this is hopefully clear, we should refactor this code. We should have a proper file structure, because in a lot of tutorials I just see something like that and they just make it work, but they don't show how to do it properly. Okay, so let's maybe scroll down and think about how we can improve our code here. Well, we could start with the routes. That's probably quite easy. We should not have this stuff in our main index.js file. So let's just extract it into another file. So for that, let's create a directory and let's call it routes. And inside that directory, add an index.js file. And to make this work, we will need an express router. So we need to import express first. And then we can say const router equals express.router. And then at the very end, we export our router. Nice. So the next thing we can do is we can just copy this and we can paste it inside our file. And instead of app, we just say router. And we can do the same thing for the profile endpoint, but maybe let's just delete that first. And let's just cut this. And let's just paste this over here. Now, you might notice that we have a slight problem here. Since we first set up the login endpoint and then the profile endpoint, both routes are not protected if we leave it like this. So first of all, we still need to plug it in into our main file, of course. But if you remember, the order was we first have our login endpoint, then we have our authenticate middleware, which checks if the user is logged in or not. And then afterwards, we have all the protected routes. So with the setup we have right here, this would no longer work. Maybe let's first import our router. Oh, I think this is just routes, right? Because if we say app.use router, then you could access the profile endpoint and without first going through this middleware here. And we definitely don't want that because that breaks our flow or authentication mechanism. In order to fix this, let's create another directory. Let's call it middleware. And inside of that directory, let's create an authenticate.js file. Let's just cut this and paste it in here. Maybe let's do a proper authenticate. Let's do proper function because it just looks nicer. So we have this function here. We cut the content of the body and we put it inside our function. And afterwards, we just export this function. Now that's pretty nice because now we no longer have this authenticate middleware in our main file, but we can use it in our routes file to protect this route here again. In order to do that, we need to import it. So what was that? No, middleware and authenticate. And inside here, we can just say router.use authenticate. So if you now look at this code, it's basically the exact same thing like we had before. The only difference is that we split it over multiple files. Now there are of course some other things that I would like to change. So for example, what I see in a lot of tutorials is that they do things like this. So you say router.post, and then you have the implementation immediately in here. That's like really, really bad code style. So the routes directory, or like everything in that routes directory, should only be concerned with the endpoints and routes. It should not be concerned with any logic. And that's why we should refactor this as well. But maybe as a little step in between, let's make sure that our application still works. Maybe we forgot something, so let's run npm run dev. Oh, and we just see something. We forgot something, routes index.js. Oh, no, not this one. This one, yeah. We forgot to replace app with router. Now it should work. Let's save this. Theoretically, it should run now, but let's stop the app and start it again. Okay, so we don't seem to have any typos at the moment. Maybe we can check our Postman or our two endpoints to see what is currently going on. So let's remove the cookie and let's call the login route. Okay, we get a cookie, that's pretty good. And now we can call this profiles endpoint, right? Yes, so that still works. Now what happens if I remove this cookie? Then theoretically I should be blocked. Yes. Okay, that's pretty good. So in terms of functionality, our application still sees to work. Now one thing I just noticed, if you go to cookies, you see that the name of the cookie is connect.sid, so connect.sessionid. And the thing is, if you're like an attacker and you have a look at the cookie name, you can kind of infer that we're using Node and that we're using the express session middleware. And this is sometimes called a powered by attack. So the outside world should not know what kind of technology we use. So that's why I would say we should rename the name. We should rename the name. We should give our cookie another name, a more generic name, so that it's not clear what technology we use. So in order to do that, we just have to add this name field inside of this call or this object. Let's try it again. So let's remove it. Let's make this call. Nice. And now you see it's just session ID. So you don't know, or it's not immediately clear like what technology we use. And then if we call the profiles endpoint, that also seems to be fine. And by the way, the error you saw before, this is just because we are running with NodeMon, and then it's returning us like the location of where the error occurred. Of course, if you're running in production, like we use proper, like we don't use NodeMon, and that's why like the user will not see the structure of our server. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now we almost reached 10 minutes, so I would say let's just continue with the refactoring in the next tutorial. I think we're pretty good so far. There's just a couple of things we still need to do, but I think we're getting there. So thank you very much for watching, and please make sure to give the video a thumbs up, and also please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. See you in the next video.